Okay, so I wanted to just make a little film and show you all some of the perennial edible things that are growing in the garden. Take my gloves off, because there's a lot of them, and we've been focused completely on the annuals in all these films, but actually a large part of the garden is taken up by perennial things, a lot of which I've planted in the garden because I can eat them. So we're looking here now at like a little mini forest garden that I've created, and a forest garden is not a garden in a forest, but rather it's a garden that copies a forest in that it tries to have lots of layers of vegetation and the soil is covered at all times. And this is a really productive part of the garden and really low maintenance now that it's established, and this you're seeing it now in its second full year only, so it hasn't really taken very long to get established. So I just want to show you some of the things that I've got in here. Get that fine read. So first of all, down here on the floor I've got strawberries, and lots of them, and you can see they're absolutely covered in flower. Now these are in their second or third year, and so they are going to give us massive buckets of strawberries this year, which is deeply exciting. But they cover the ground completely so that they suppress the weeds and keep the moisture in the soil, and there isn't any real tending to do other than to take out the excess of these strawberries and make some space for other things. Up here, coming up through them, we've got a June berry, which has got nice berries forming on it, and they will ripen in July actually, probably, even though it's a June berry. And then we've got some soft fruits. So these are quite young still, so not doing very much, but this is a blackcurrant. Over here we've got a gooseberry, and I also let some of the herbs grow in the garden, so we've got some plantain growing in here. And then if we move back over this way, another ground cover plant, which is really great at this point in the year, is the buckler leaf sorrel. So this is a sorrel, but with this really interesting shaped leaf, and it's really delicious and lemony, and you can put it in salads and you can cook with it. And coming around here, we've got chives, we've got oregano, all of these things being ground cover. And coming down the path, we've got an apple tree here, and behind them you can see the comfrey, which we've talked about already, which has grown a lot since we last looked at it. Okay, so on this side we've got a morello cherry. This is the darker side of the garden, and that's something else to say. A lot of these plants that we're showing you now don't mind, or in fact often like, shade, so people often wonder what to do with the shady area of the garden. Well, here you go, you can grow lots and lots of stuff in it. So a morello cherry. Under that we've got a sweet Sicily, which is an umbellifer, but an edible one. And the leaves are really good to cook with sharp fruits like gooseberries and rhubarb. You can also eat it in salads, but it is an umbellifer, so make sure you know 100% that it's the right thing before you eat it, because some of them, that family, are very, very poisonous. More chives, more sorrel, and then we've got lots and lots of ground ivy here, which is can be used as a pot herb and can be used to make really nice tea. And the bees also love that. That's covered in flowers at the moment. So that's most of what we've got, some more soft fruit in the forest garden. And then there's just a few more things around the garden that are quite interesting and are at their sort of most useful now, which I want to show you. Okay, so in this very shady bed along the north facing wall, along the back of it we've got this beautiful blackberry, which is a thornless blackberry, and underneath it we've got growing again more sweet Sicily and more sorrel, but this one here, which looks like a really large garlic, is basically a really large garlic. But this is a perennial garlic called a Babington's leek, although in fact it's garlicky. And this you can eat the greens of at any stage, and you can cook with them or eat them in salads. And it also makes a really beautiful flower head, which will then turn into tiny little bulbs, which you can also eat, or you can plant them in the bed. So you can actually go from having one of these plants to having lots and lots of them in a short space of time. That's one of my favourite perennial garden plants. And there's a few more around the back. Okay, another shady bed in the garden which is full of edible, mainly perennial plants. This white flowered plant here is Siberian purslane, and if you know annual purslane you'll probably recognise the shape of the leaf. It's very succulent and delicious, really sort of mild flavour and really good in salads, and as you can see plenty of it, and self-seeds freely, so plenty more to come. Then this is a really interesting plant. This is Hablitzia tamnoides, Caucasian spinach, which is not related to our spinach but is edible. You can eat the tips like this raw at this time of year, and some of the smaller leaves, and you can pick the bigger leaves and cook them later in the season, and it romps away, and I'm trying to encourage it to climb up this fence, but it will also sort of spill over the edge of the bed, and that's a perennial, so that will come back year after year, and I think this is probably a new favourite for me. We've got a hosta in here which is doing reasonably well. I'd given up on hostas because the slugs and snails absolutely love them, as you can see, but this one decided it did want to grow, and the unfurling leaves, the small unfurling leaves of the hostas are edible as well, all hostas. And then finally this little fern, which we haven't harvested from yet because it's only been in, this is only its second year, but this is ostrich fern, and it's the only fern which is definitely edible and eatable, and you eat these little fiddleheads. You can see that, but the little unfurling fern tendrils in there are the bits that you eat, but we won't harvest from that until next year because it's so tiny. But I just wanted to show you some of those things now because they're kind of at their best, and some of them would just be going over. They're really useful. They're useful to put in shady spaces, they're useful as ground cover, they're useful if you want a lower maintenance garden or part of a garden, and they're also really useful because they come into the green earlier than the annual vegetables that you'll be growing, and often then they'll die back in the summer, but in the autumn you might probably get another flush again, so they kind of fill some of those gaps where you might not be getting so many fresh green annual veg in your garden. So that's my perennial veg.